Welcome everyone. Welcome back to my channel, Holy Humanist. Today is the very first live stream and we have a very special guest with us. He goes by the name of Secular Spirit and he's also active on Twitter under the name, two names because one wasn't good enough, Leaving Islam and Secular Spirit. So yeah, also definitely follow him on there because he puts snippets of other people's stories, and honestly, it's just really interesting to see like the different angles of why people left Islam. So yeah, welcome, Secular Spirit. I will also share your YouTube channel. Let me just do that.
Thank you so much, by the way.
You are very welcome.
So
this is his channel.
Am I the first live stream guest? Is that correct?
You are
Wow.
Indeed.
I
Are
feel
you
very
honored?
privileged. Yes, I do.
No, we're literally so honored to have you here. So thank you so much. And yeah, if you just want to kind of, obviously this is going to focus on like our experiences in Dubai, because I feel like, I don't know why, when you come across someone that's grown up in Dubai, it's automatically like, oh my God, I live there too, because it's such a small place. So that's initially how our conversation started as well. Like what school, and then it just kind of goes from there. Yeah. But if you kind of just want to give people a little bit of your background and why you left Islam and when you left Islam in a nutshell, and then we can move on from there.
Yeah, for sure. And the only thing I just wanted to say before that was the funny thing about meeting people from who grew up in Dubai is, okay, are they the ones who kind of see through the, the BS of life there? Or are they the indoctrinated ones? And you can kind of tell, like I could tell with some friends I know here who grew up in Dubai, like, oh, okay, they see my perspective. They're not the, there's the kinds of people who are like, oh, well, yeah, it's a great place to party and the nightlife is great. And those are the telltale signs like, oh, okay, you're only focusing on that one part of life in Dubai. But anyway.
Yeah, which honestly sometimes gets them by because you have to like switch off and just be in the bubble. But I'm sure we'll break all of this down.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
For sure.
So I go by a fake name, a pseudonym for this channel as well, Secular Spirit. So I go by Alim. There's a whole bunch of reasons. I guess we can get into that a bit too later on of why I use a pseudonym. I believe you use your real name, right?
I do, yeah. Just
I haven't been able to take that step yet, so I admire your courage in doing that.
But no, scary, daunting, but
yes.
But do whatever you have to do.
Of course. So I come from a Palestinian background. My father's a Palestinian refugee. I was born in the UAE, actually. I tend to tell people, oh, I was born in Dubai, just for simplicity's sake, but I was actually born in Sharjah, which is the next emirate over. And yeah, so I actually spent the first couple of years of my life there. Then I moved to Canada for a few years and the UK for a year. And then I spent the rest of my childhood in Dubai. So from around age 8 to 17, I lived in Dubai. And then I moved to Canada for university. And that's around the time that I turned 17, 16, so towards the end of school here in school in Dubai, that I really started having doubts and this existential crisis that I couldn't really figure out what the root cause of it was. I mean, can I continue?
Yes, please. Sorry about that.
No worries. So yeah, I had this crisis of kind of typical, teenage stuff maybe of what's the point of life? Why am I here? What am I doing? Why am I going to university?
And existential crisis.
Yes. And so when I went to university and I really had to confront those questions because I had to motivate myself to go to school and study and do all that, I started looking at Islam from a different perspective of, does this really offer anything to me? And when I really put the lens on it, of scrutinizing it from a more objective, just not biased belief perspective, it just fell away. It fell away, and over the course of a year, I was still Muslim, but it slowly and gradually chipped away until around when I was 18, I realized, you know what, I don't know if this is true. I don't even know if this is a good way to lead your life, even if it isn't true. And I just realized, you know what, I'm not Muslim anymore.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. So you said you lived in Dubai from the ages of 8 to 17. Is that right?
And from when I was born to around roughly when I was 4. So there was that little gap when I lived in the West. in the
Right.
Middle East.
Okay. Because yeah, I think our stories are quite similar in terms of like our upbringing. Because I lived
Mhm.
in the Middle East from 9 till 18, and 9 to 16 was in Saudi, but then 16 to 18 was in Dubai, and then I actually came back to live there as an adult as well. But your story's interesting because you moved as well back to Canada and the UK, and um, do you feel like those little bits of your life where you're exposed to the West also kind of like just gave you a bit of a different mindset when you were in Dubai and you were kind of living in
Mhm.
this microcosm of a bubble? And also, when did your doubts creep in terms of the timeline age wise?
Well, to answer your first question, it definitely changed my perspective and who I was as a person those years
Mm-hmm.
I lived in the West. And I think you can relate to this too, just the fact of just moving back and forth or moving to different countries when you're a kid. You end up coming to this new place where you're obviously going to be a bit different than everyone around you.
Right.
And I think because I spent a couple of very formative years, between the ages of 4 and 8, roughly speaking, in the West, when I came back to Dubai, I was so drastically different from everyone else. There was a bit of like my Arabic had worsened over the time that I was gone,
Mm-hmm.
and just culturally speaking, I just didn't see eye to eye with my classmates on a lot of things. I just didn't know what
Wow.
life was like in Dubai anymore, so I had to relearn it and
Readjust.
yeah, and adapt. And to be honest with you, the differences stayed pretty much throughout
I was
my whole
just gonna
childhood.
say that really takes a hit, doesn't it, on
It
your
really does,
entire
yeah.
psyche. You're like, I was fine in the first kind of chapter and phase of this, but now that I've seen just different things operating differently, coming back to such a just the Dubai is such a insular place that you kind of either have to like it's like you if you can't beat them join them because there's no other way to get by in that place because even for example I didn't have any doubts about my faith when I was in Dubai, which might be slightly different, but if I had, you know how like for example in England we have basically a pub every 100 meters.
Yeah,
In Dubai it's the same with mosques, like you're never too
yeah,
far away from a mosque and you hear the azan 5 times a day. You
yeah.
get woken up on, I mean, I definitely get annoyed by it, like on Friday the Jummah, like the khutbah at like 12 when you just want to lie in because it's the weekend and like
Hmm.
the imam is basically shouting. It's very aggressive in Arabic, like relaying stories. And that where I lived there was like 5 or 6 mosques, and so they would all go off at the same time and all these voices are muffled, but it's just like horrible air pollution.
Well, to be honest with you, it kind of just became white noise for me over
Wow.
time. Like especially like the morning ones. Like I remember in Ramadan, you could really hear the morning ones, the
Yeah.
Fajr
Yeah.
for the Fajr prayer. Yeah. You remind me of a joke my dad used to make about Dubai, that you come to Dubai and 90% of it is malls, gas stations, and mosques.
Yeah.
That's like the holy trinity of Dubai life. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, no, literally. So I think even in terms of schooling, I think being, even though Dubai is such a small place, I think both of us have had very different schooling experiences in Dubai, and I think that's actually what's shaped us as well, like
oh,
into who we are
definitely,
today.
definitely, yeah.
So from what I understand, I myself went to an international school, which was actually co-ed and pretty much exactly
I was
an
so
extension.
jealous of the international school students for that reason.
You should have. Honestly, they're actually quite fun, and there's so many. I don't know. Oh, if you would have had such a different experience.
Yeah, there's
Um,
reasons I went to the school I did.
I'm
Like,
sure
yeah, yeah.
if you can enlighten us, please do. And
Oh,
also,
it's just
how was that experience for you?
well, so I went to and I think it was an international school as well, but it just followed the UAE curriculum. I could be wrong about this, but my understanding was that if you want to get the high school diploma that's part of the UAE curriculum, you have to separate the genders after a certain age. So in my
Wow.
school, after fourth grade, so fourth grade is co-ed, and then boys and girls separate from fifth grade onwards.
Right.
So technically, I was in a boys and girls school, but the boys
Hmm.
section was separated and the girls were separate. And so the reason I went to that school, long story short, is because my parents got a discount. So
Okay.
no matter
Which
how
no,
much,
but it's true because Dubai, the schools are a profit-making business. They're
of course,
literally
yeah,
there to make money. So you do go where the best deal is.
exactly, yeah. So no
Unless your
matter how
company's
much,
paying for it.
yeah, I mean, if there was a choice, I would have gone elsewhere, but
Yeah.
because of that, you can't really argue about it. And I complained about my school often. So did my younger brother. I have a brother who's a couple years younger than me, but we were stuck there for life.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. And so, in terms of, because for us, for example, in the international school, just by default, like I was studying the IB, so like International Baccalaureate,
yeah,
it's the international version of A levels in the UK. But in order to even pass that, which is a Swiss-based curriculum, it's got nothing to do with the UAE. We still had to have an add-on subject of Islamic, like whether or not you believe in it or you've got time for it or if it's relevant to your university. If your passport has a Muslim name and your like father or whatever is considered Muslim, you have to take it. And
exactly.
for us, can you imagine, it was just a bunch of like international expat kids. So there was like Pakistanis, Indians, Iranians, Lebanese, and like that class was almost a joke. People wouldn't take it seriously, or they'd be like, "Miss, I don't believe in this. My passport just says it, but I don't want to be in this class." And I actually won the award for effort in that because we had to do a test, and they asked when the prophet was born and when he died, and literally I was the only person to know like the most
Wow.
basic details.
Oh my.
This is how much of a joke it was. And then obviously the native Arab speakers, so my friends who spoke Arabic, they would go and do, while we were in Islamic, which was basically a free lesson, they would go and actually study like classical Arabic, like literature and stuff in the kind of old Arabic text. So, and they hated that as well. But that's a different story. But I'm guessing because of the curriculum in your school, the focus on Arabic or Islam or Islamic studies, well, what was that like? Was it compulsory as well? I'm sure it was, but yeah,
Mhm.
to what extent was that enforced?
So we did have, similar to your school, if you were Muslim, you had to take this course called Islamic Education. It was part of the government curriculum. We had the government textbooks, and so just kind of like a class like any other class. So physics, biology, then Islamic education.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of surprising to me to hear you like say that it was. It sounds like your classmates were so flippant about it because the attitude was completely different in my school. We were mostly Arabs from all over the Middle East, and the Islamic education teachers, who ironically were both called Muhammad, were both pretty
My Islamic
intimidating.
teacher was too.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they were very intimidating people, especially the one I had in the latter years. So I took it very seriously, and uh, there was no way we could joke around and say, "Oh, I don't actually really believe in this. It just says it on my passport," or anything
Yeah.
like that. And kind of just to tie into like how I kind of felt different than everybody else. So I wasn't really taught much religion at home growing up.
Mhm.
So most of my religious education was in school, and because I didn't know a lot of this stuff coming in that everybody else did when I moved back to Dubai, I always had this kind of inferiority complex with Islamic education, where I felt like I have to do more, I have to show that I'm Muslim like everybody else, and that carried throughout all my time at that school.
So that was that also outside of school? Would you like go read Jummah every Friday? Would you try and kind of encourage your dad or your brothers to, or was that kind of just when you were in school you really wanted to present the fact that I am a Muslim and I know my stuff?
There isn't really a straightforward answer to that. I would say I oscillated back and forth between feeling really committed to Islam, usually because of guilt, because I didn't do all the things that you're supposed to do. So I rarely prayed the 5 times a day. I don't think I ever went to Jama prayer actually.
Wow.
Uh, I had a bit of social anxiety when I was a kid, so any excuse to not go like around strangers,
Mhm.
I would take it. So if my parents weren't telling me to go, I wouldn't go.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense because usually it is more like I guess it's like if your dad's
yeah,
going and you're not awake, it's a
exactly.
bit worse. But yeah, if that's not being enforced, then that definitely
Yeah.
makes sense.
So I always had the feeling that my parents were just really lax Muslims,
Hmm.
and but I had the responsibility to try and encourage them to take more of a role in just doing the basic Muslim things. So I'd always be probing my parents for questions, and I remember there was this one time where I realized, oh, both my parents don't know how to pray, because I asked them, "Can you teach me?" And when they couldn't, I
Yeah.
thought, oh, they're just huge sinners. So I had to
Yeah.
teach myself. And after that, I remember I'm not sure exactly why I did this, but I started praying in secret in my bedroom. Like I'd close it.
Wow.
I know, like some kids are doing all like porn or whatever it is, and I'm just
And
like
here you
secretly
are
praying.
praying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I had this
Yeah.
feeling they wouldn't. I don't know. It's I can't really explain why I did it looking back now, but it was definitely something I kept doing because I felt guilty for not doing everything I was supposed to be doing. So that's kind of what sustained my faith, the guilt.
Right. And then you would kind of overcompensate by praying in secret and kind of making up for it in these
Yeah.
little ways. Yeah, I know that's really interesting. So obviously because you're in that school environment where you're saying like even you have to kind of act more Muslim than you maybe even
Yeah.
knew you were. So the friends you had, did they kind of reinforce these more Islamic beliefs, and did they kind of keep you and pull you into this circle more, or were there friends of yours that were like radically different and that kind of influenced you, or
It's tough to say. There weren't many kids who were very religious in my class, or there were some who were religious. I always remember this one kid who he was the ace Islamic education student. He could recite the Quran beautifully, perfectly. Like he'd clearly taken like special lessons. But
yeah.
he was that teacher's favorite. But he was an awful person. Like, he was just a bad human being. He would bully people. He would make monkey noises when teachers weren't
Oh God.
around.
Yeah.
I remember there was this one kid who had like burn scars all over like this side of his face and his chest, and this kid who was the supposed model Islamic student would
Yeah.
call him, I guess, scorched or burnt would be the translation. Mahru is what he'd call him in
Oh
Arabic.
my gosh.
And so there was a lot of hypocrisy I saw in the supposedly more Muslim students, the more religious ones. I
Hmm.
think a lot of them were kind of like me, where they put up the front and they did the basic things like fasting for Ramadan and praying when you had to, but we do terrible things that we knew we weren't supposed to do otherwise. Uh,
Yeah. Was it just like, was it also normal like teenage boy stuff? Like I don't
yeah,
know, you're
yeah.
trying your first cigarettes, or you're trying to
There was
chat up
all of that.
girls? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was, yeah,
Okay. Okay,
exactly.
so they did so it wasn't as like it wasn't as tame or as PG of an upbringing. You guys kind of did do
No,
normal teenage guy stuff.
within a limit. Like my
Okay.
interaction with girls was limited to nothing,
Right.
just because they were in a different section of the school, and I kind of just, whether from teachers' pressure or a little bit of parental pressure, just societal pressure, I don't know, maybe all of the above, I kind of stayed clear of them because I had this idea that was definitely encouraged in school of, you know what, girls are for something you do once you're an adult, once you
Hmm.
get married, and anything the outside of that is kind of unacceptable. So that's one
Yeah.
thing I was really good at.
So did that ever well,
Steer
if there
clear of the girls.
you probably saved yourself a lot of heartbreak, so
Well, or I
and
just
money
delayed it for
and
later on.
time. Oh yeah. True, true, true. So yeah, just in terms of, because we are obviously at this point living in Dubai, so obviously you've kind of got that mentality, and that's encouraged that, you know, girls are, it's just not now, you kind of don't focus on that now. But then I'm sure when you'd go out and about and, you know, you see, because when we're out and about, Dubai is very kind of liberal. If you go around walking around Dubai Mall, if you walk around like Mall of Emirates, even like, you know, the desert trip, sand duning, girls are like in shorts and bikinis and all that kind of thing, and you are able to go on dates. Like if you know, I guess Dubai is a place which is as conservative or as liberal as you choose to make it. So I guess if you're looking for more liberal elements of Dubai, there's a
You can
ready-made
find them.
platter for you. Yeah. And if you want a more conservative kind of experience, you've got Sharjah, which is a lot more Saudi-esque and like conservative. And then you've got the Emirates, where you can party more on the cheap, but they're a bit more conservative. You know, like Ras Al Khaimah is pretty lax.
Mhm.
But did you ever think, like, when you'd go out and about and you'd see kind of like almost mingling in the same way you do in the West, and, you know, groups of guys and girls hanging out or going to the cinema, or did you ever think, why am I kind of cutting myself off from all of this?
Well, I think the best way of putting it was what education at school taught me was that there's a right way of doing things, the correct way of doing things, and that's the Islamic way. And
Right.
one of the biggest I guess the biggest problem in the world is that a lot of us have strayed from this true path, including in Dubai. So when I'd go in the shopping mall and I'd see girls wearing tight jeans and showing cleavage or whatever it happened to be, or seeing people who I deemed to be gay, because I
Hmm.
was pretty homophobic back then too.
Ditto.
I,
So was I. So
yeah,
bad.
yeah. I'd just think these people are doing the wrong thing. I'd think that of myself. If I did the wrong thing, I'd do it with my parents. It was this constant internal judge that I had in my head
Hmm.
that looked around at all the things that I knew were unacceptable and that were just, I guess, sinful. And I
And
remember
did you ever?
thinking, people are
Yeah.
going to hell. Like they're going to hell. They're going to hell. They're going to hell.
Yeah, they are.
I'm probably going to hell.
Yeah, it just made you feel better. Like, yeah, they're having short-term fun, but they're going to hell.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, that's so interesting because obviously we do know, I mean, that you can't get away from the fact that like Islam is like a massive part of daily life in Dubai and like even our
Yeah.
holidays for school and like all of that. We'd have public holidays for like the Prophet's birthday, Laylatul
Eid
Miraj,
al-Adha. Yeah.
Eid
Yeah.
al-Adha, all of those 3 days, I think Eid al-Fitr as well, all of them, basically, your whole school curriculum is tied into like when the Islamic
Mhm.
public holidays will happen. So when there were kind of like at times, for example, like Ramadan, where
Mhm.
I know for like expats who are really liberal because do you remember, I don't know if you know, but they'd always implement a dry night, like on Laylatul Miraj, like for 24 hours, they won't serve alcohol in the restaurants and bars, and non-Muslims would literally be stocking up before this night happened. But obviously as a believing Muslim, you still like that night is sacred to you, and it just feels like because you're in a country which has taken a day off for it and given it this respect. And the same thing in Ramadan, like timings are all different. You get to like stack off work, school, everything
I loved it.
changes.
It was my
It
favorite
was
time of the year. It was
except
amazing.
nothing gets done in the country, but it's so good for
That's
you.
true. That's true. Yeah, yeah, I just looked at it as a big holiday. You
Yeah,
get
yeah,
to
yeah.
sleep in on school days. You get to go home early. There was all this special TV programming just for Ramadan, like all these new
Uh-huh.
TV shows and just the iftar dinners.
No,
It was just fun.
exactly. Yeah, and the whole like celebratory atmosphere of like setting up like the iftar tents and the suhoor
Yeah,
tents, and people just literally sit there from like iftar till suhoor having shisha and just eating the entire night.
yeah.
So I
It was
mean,
just a nice change of routine. I think that's what I looked forward to most about it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. And did you in any of those months or when that was all happening, did you ever feel more like closer to your religion? Even for
definitely.
yeah.
I definitely did. I completely understand, just being a former believer myself, the power that, the solidarity that a religion can bring to people. And I do remember like genuinely feeling that there was some sort of divine presence in my life during those time periods where I'd be doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing as a Muslim. I'm praying,
Hmm.
I'm fasting, and being trying to be kind to others. It almost made me glow from inside. It really had a powerful feeling in my life.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
there's a but.
It's a big but. Yeah.
But when I did, especially in Ramadan, when I did things I wasn't supposed to do, the guilt, I'd always feel so guilty. This
Like a
was
little
something
lie
I
or
have something to tell you. This is something I was debating. Should I mention this or not? It's
go for it.
it's
Come on,
kind of
Soki, for
embarrassing, I
it.
suppose.
No, let's
So I used to have this thing. It's going to sound like I had like an addiction or something, which I guess that's how my mind viewed it at the time.
Mhm.
But something that was really drilled into us through school and just through society again in general is, pornography is haram. Masturbation is so haram. It's one of the worst things you can do. That's something you cannot do. You have to wait until marriage, and any other form of sexual release, sexual experience is just wrong.
But you're in a
And
really tight spot here because you don't have interaction with girls, and now masturbation is off
there's
limits.
yes,
You're gonna
exactly. Well,
implode.
I should also mention that like, pornography was almost non-existent in Dubai as well. I mean, when I was older, I
Exactly.
figured out ways to go around that, as I think most
I think
boys,
everybody has that weight,
whether
and
they're
I think
Muslim or not
everybody
Muslim, do.
needs that in Dubai now, just to get by. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous. You
exactly.
literally can't even search historical websites. So
No, no, that's something I think
VPN,
people
guys.
don't exactly. That's a thing people I don't think realize about Dubai is that similar to I think how China does it. There's a lot of websites that are just censored, taken off the
Hmm.
internet.
Hmm.
And anyway,
Yeah.
so in Ramadan, I really try to make myself, you know what? This is the holy month. I'm not gonna masturbate in this month. I'm gonna stop myself from doing it. And it was really like I felt like the more I put pressure on myself to not do it, it was more of a desire to just do it. Like, and I'd
Mhm.
count the days. I'd be counting the days until Ramadan was over, and then the worst feeling of just self-loathing, and I think you know where I'm going with this, self-loathing and shame and embarrassment and anger was when I finally broke. And
Uh-huh.
I always did. I always did. And it just reinforced this idea that, oh, I'm just this weak, worthless human being who can't even do this simple thing, who's like doing this in Ramadan of all times.
Yeah.
And um, I would almost compare it to uh, the mentality of maybe someone who's an addict for something, and then when they finally break, they relapse, and then they go, full tilt into it. Well, going into
Yeah.
more details about what that means in my case, but yeah. So Ramadan, it felt good, but when I didn't do exactly what the religion told me to do,
Mhm.
then it kind of just imploded on itself for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because obviously, like, you're trying to repress something that's just literally so natural. It's counterintuitive, but when you have this constant
Yeah,
thing of fear and like the carrot and the stick, kind of, it's gonna be so draining on even on you mentally because the reinforcement of I'm a bad person and I'm a sinful person and I'm dirty or whatever doing this in the holy month. It's not good for the psyche, but you obviously learned that Islam thrives off fear and
yeah.
yeah,
I didn't
that
view it that way. I didn't view it as I'm repressed or I just thought that this is what you're not supposed to. Obviously, Allah's telling us not to do this. He has good reasons for it.
yeah.
And it's just, shaitan whispering in my ear, trying to get
Waswasa.
me to, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't really look at it that way until I left, to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
honest.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sorry for all those times where you beat yourself up mentally or emotionally
Oh,
for,
I can't even remember how it's all so long in the past, thankfully, but
yeah, it's
there was
crazy,
a lot
right?
of
It just
guilt.
seems like a blur afterwards when you kind of come away from all of that and your mentality is so different that you're like, what was I thinking? What was I doing?
Hmm.
But yeah, so and just a really funny story as well. It happened in Ramadan, it's why I just remembered it. But
Okay.
I think I was 16 or 17 and I was on my way to school and I had like the most important exams. And it was Ramadan, but I wasn't fasting because my brain wouldn't work for the
They had
exam.
exams in Ramadan.
Yeah, that's what I'm
That's
saying. See,
harsh.
because we're doing a Swiss board, they don't really care for the Islamic months, but Dubai schools are like, you have to sit this anyway if you want to get into university. So I was in the car and I was just like reading through my notes, but I had a disposable coffee cup in my hand, and I like the windows were slightly tinted out. Like most people in Dubai have like slightly tinted windows, right? But this Emirati pulled up to me. The traffic lights right next door and he was like waving his arms around and I was like, what's wrong with this man? He's like, put your window down, put your window down. So I put my window down and it's like 17-year-old me in my school uniform, like I'm literally about to sit the biggest exam of my life right now. What could this be? And he was like, la haram, haram, like stop it. And I was like, what, like what's he talking about? And
Oh,
he's like pointing to my coffee cup and I literally just put it down and I was like, sorry mate, like like fair enough, like it is Ramadan and stuff. I'm Muslim myself. There's literally a reason which in my head I thought like Allah would excuse me for not fasting because I had an exam. But I was like, this man has the audacity to like tell this 17-year-old girl that like don't even show it's not even like a enticing looking drink. It was a black coffee mug. Like how how much could that
Yeah.
offend you possibly? Like
How did he see it too? Like he just like he had like just a radar for something like that.
Exactly. And like honestly, that's bothering you. But like down Jumeirah Beach Road, all of the KFC ads, McDonald's ads, they're not bothering you. But my black
It's just
disposable
this
cup
one
is,
thing.
yeah, which was so opposite. Because when I came to England and I like went on public transport once when I was fasting, this guy was eating like the nicest looking burger in front of me, and I was just like, oh my god, I have like 6 hours or something before I can eat one of those. But in my head I thought, this is actually much better to test me as a Muslim. Like my willpower is being tested right now, as opposed to if and nobody around me is eating, it's easy because you're all kind of so yeah. It was such a different case of like how things are handled. But yeah, so Ramadan is
It's so
always
shame-based. It really is.
it really is. And like I think now they've gotten better. They said they're not like gonna close off places and like people can eat if they want to. But up until recently, it was almost like scary, you know, like you don't want to be caught even having a sip of water in the wrong place. And yeah, it's not like Saudi where they have the like mutawa police that enforce like these
Thankfully,
things.
yeah.
Thankfully, yeah.
There was
But
this. You reminded me that there was this thing we would do in school where it was kind of like a sign of manhood if you were fasting. Because I remember we started fasting very young. Like people were fasting at 8, 9, like those
oh,
ages.
mhm.
And so what we do is we'd inspect kids' tongues to make sure that they weren't lying about fasting.
Oh my
Because if your
God,
tongue, if your tongue is like really white and scratchy, that means you
you're
definitely haven't.
dehydrated.
You're
Yeah.
dehydrated. You haven't been
Yeah.
drinking water. You probably haven't been eating.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
you guys were next level.
But
That's
like to
crazy.
I think like, looking back, what it was for example, this person who accosted you about your coffee. People do those things not necessarily to police you, but to prove that they themselves are. Look at me, I'm such a good Muslim.
Hmm.
I'm helping this person, and it really works as. It reminds me of the stories you hear about how Soviet Russia was at the peak of Stalin's time, of just having people reporting their neighbors and uh, betraying friends, family if they didn't follow the party line. And that's really what Islam does. It creates this mindset where you're just constantly looking out to
Hmm.
make sure that others aren't disobeying the things that they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I think I completely agree with that. Like, and I think living in Dubai as well, you kind of feel that twofold because you're like, well, there is Sharia law and it is that Islamic, like that whole culture of, like you said, crazy policing. But then even as the state they operate, like as a sheikhdom or whatever, it is basically a police state, right? It's like this man at the top, and anything that kind of comes down to us, like the public residents, the news is filtered. Like you said, our internet's cut off. We can't even use like WhatsApp, FaceTime, none of these things. um I was actually remembering a couple of days ago, I think for one of the Eids, they opened up WhatsApp calls. So literally, you know, all the like laborers and
Hmm.
the like they were on their phone for the entire day, like speaking for free back home. And then I think the government shut it off at like 10 p.m. again. And it was just so horrible because you gave people this taster of like what it's like to live in more of a free, lax country. But because they want to keep things so under wraps,
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's just I mean, I would consider it a police state, to be honest. I mean, the news was very restrictive. You can't speak against the government or the state at all. And I remember, I don't know if you guys would get the 7 Days newspaper at your place, but we'd
I
get
remember it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I do.
So there were certain stories in the 7 days where I actually like knew people who were part of another incident. And when there is something as tragic as like, you know, an expat child dying or, you know, a British kid falling, if it was say drug related or alcohol related or underage drinking related, they would completely like mesh the story into
That's if you
like
hear about it at all.
it's true, exactly.
Yeah.
And times when they can't not report it because it's like to do with a school or something that has to be, it's completely changed. So what we're seeing and what we're reading, for example, it's really weird, but when I left Dubai, I just suddenly like because wherever you, if you go back to the West or whatever, you're so much more involved in like politics and what's happening around you. I've suddenly felt so much smarter. When I was in Dubai, honestly, all I could think about was like, what's the latest restaurant opening like in JBR, and like what's the, you know, where's the new water park, and you're just so
Which
caught
I
up.
believe is intentional. I believe it's intentional. They want the government there. They want people to be disengaged from political discourse and from government. They don't
Yeah,
want people involved. That's the thing that I don't think
yeah.
people realize, especially people living in Canada where I live, is, you know, they hear the PR spin on it, but when you actually go there, there's no the government isn't there to represent you. The government isn't there to look out for your interests. There's no accountability from the government. They just do whatever they want. If something is a failure, a massive failure, they'll find some way to spin it, or they'll find someone to blame,
Yeah.
and or they just don't talk about it at all. So
They're very good at that. They're very good at
very good
hushing
at it.
things
Yeah,
up. I
very good
mean,
at omitting details.
yes, definitely. And to be honest, even details that are extremely like high level to do with their own families, like when a
Oh,
sheikh's
of
son, the
course.
eldest son, died, it was under such precarious circumstances. But like they literally did his funeral in one of the mosques in Dubai. Very quick, like so quick time, just swept under the carpet. He died, da da da, move on. But it's because these Western media reports were like, oh, you know, he was on horse tranquilizer, or he was in the middle of like a crazy party and he just OD'd, or but none of those things would ever trickle back to the UAE. It's kind of just like, but the like the pace at which they do it, like to remove things from the public eye or before people can get their hands on them, is astonishing. But then they've been working with like Israeli security tech companies since way before they opened up business to
Yeah,
Israel. Um, which is why like even their social media rules that they kind of enforce legally are ridiculous, and like women are going to jail for writing donkey on like her ex-husband's Facebook
really.
page. Yeah, like it's insane. I think there was a British air hostess and she got detained in Dubai airport because of something she had tweeted from England. But they, I mean, the lengths you can go to. I think there was one point it was while I was living there. I think you might have left by then, but it was you couldn't write the word like the F word on WhatsApp. If you wrote that to anyone, you could go to jail.
I didn't
So
know that.
so even with your friends, you had to
Nothing
be.
surprises me about that place, though.
But I mean, that, you know, like literally, you're like having banter with your friends, and you're like, mate, if this person takes this wrong one day and just goes to like Barsha police station, like, hey guys, it's
Yeah,
really bad. But yeah, so do you feel like living there, growing up there, now has that shaped who you are, your journey? Like, how much do you kind of hold on to that chapter?
that's a big question.
Take your time to answer
Uh,
it.
it definitely, I can't say it didn't partially shape who I am.
Yeah.
I could talk about a lot of different things and go on for an hour, probably just about this. But I think the best way to explain it is that that phase of my life, and I think it was partially because I was a kid at the time, I call that phase of my life the one where I just listened to what others told me about what I should be doing.
Right.
So I just listened to any kind of external authority, and I really respected them, and wanted to. I was very compliant in that way. I just wanted to prove that I was doing the right thing, to whatever authority figure it is, parents, teachers, God.
Mhm.
And I think that was partially due to the fact that I had moved around a bit. And when you move around and you're new, you wanna you wanna show that you fit in. Some kids do the opposite, where they act out. I definitely was the compliant version of that, the complete opposite. So what to answer a question actually that you asked me a while ago of when the doubts started, they did start when I was living in Dubai, but I didn't really connect it to me being disconnected from Islam. That really started when I moved to Canada. But what really started happening was me feeling, why am I listening to these people telling me what to do? Whether it was my parents
Mm.
telling me you should study this and you need to go to university, or teachers saying that this is important, or you shouldn't talk to girls, you shouldn't watch porn, you shouldn't eat pork, you shouldn't whatever.
Mhm.
All those thoughts started coming towards the end of my time there, and I think that was the biggest shift in my personality from what I was in Dubai. I went from just doing exactly what I was told and being very compliant to actually thinking for myself. So that was, I'd say, to become who I am now, I had to go through that initial phase of upbringing in Dubai to realize, you know what, I shouldn't always be listening to what people are saying just because
Mhm.
they're older or wiser or whatever, or because they wield power. I should think for myself.
Wow, that's kind of impressive that even, I mean, then, even though you didn't kind of form the link with like Islam per se, because neither did I until I moved back to the UK. But you kind of had this like, why do I have so much like top-down authority on me? But I think I'm different because I've never kind of been one for authority, so I'd always be
Well, there you
breaking the
go.
rules anyway.
So you
Yeah.
you were probably the opposite. You were the rebel one, the rebel
Yeah, no,
version.
definitely. That's what I'm saying. Dubai is as liberal as you want. You like, honestly, in our school, people had like fake IDs at like 15,
Oh,
16. You
I'd
could,
hear stories about schools like yours. I'd hear the
yeah,
stories
they're
about the
crazy.
teen pregnancies and the drug parties and the orgies. I heard all kinds of rumors back
Oh
then.
my gosh, yeah. Well, I was never got that because we were well, my branch was a relatively new school, so we were kind of all just like
You didn't have time yet.
we didn't have time, yeah, and we were all like just we're guinea pigs to this new school because some Emirati is like, I've got some money, let me open a new branch of this, and here we all are. Um, so we were just kind of more concerned about what level of
Mhm.
education we were getting. But yeah, because everybody, honestly, even the Muslims, they were from such varied backgrounds that no one really like stuck to like being like a proper Muslim. I
Mhm.
mean, they would be supplying like egg cups for, like to take shots in, trying to get into clubs. We've all got fake IDs at this point. So it was honestly for me kind of really similar to growing up in the West, for example, but I loved it so much because it was like an atmosphere I'd find in like London or wherever, but with the safety bubble and like with like you'd hear things about like, oh, if you're, you know, if you're trying to get home and you're stuck after a night out, the police will actually take you and drop you home, which they have done. They've actually been nice enough to do that. I know there's cases where they do that, but then you also have like the CID who like come knock on your window and they're like, where do you live? Get home
Oh
now.
yeah.
And
Well,
yeah.
what's the CID again? What does that stand? They're like basically like the secret police, right?
Yeah, they are.
I
I don't know.
remember them. I
And
remember them. Yeah.
they're in normal clothes, right? So you're
Yeah.
always like, and this is the crazy thing. This is why Dubai is a catch-22 because you're a
Exactly.
Muslim, you're
Yeah.
out, you're having a good time, you're drinking in a bar, but the guy next to you, he's not in Kundura, so he could be CID. And just because you're a Muslim, you can't get a license. You actually can't. So technically, it's illegal for you to even be out there having a drink. But you're screwed because this undercover cop has just caught you. So yeah, the CID was honestly one of the scariest things for us, like where there were known to, and like there was always a rule of thumb, like if you are out in a nightclub or something, you should always leave like half an hour before it closes because that's when the CID want to come in and they're especially looking out for like prostitution and that kind of thing. So that all happens like way later in the night. So you want to like leave and be home. Um,
But
but
prostitution was rampant from what I
yeah,
remember of Dubai. That's the funny thing, the two sides of the city. I think the
yeah.
rest of the UAE is a bit different, but Dubai is just a constant
Yeah, I mean, there's
paradox.
certain areas, right, which you just know, like,
Yeah.
and the crazy thing is, like, where I live, there was a couple nearby, and honestly, the only cars that were parked outside there would be like police cars in their lunchtime break, and you're just like, well, okay, this is like a, like, even for example, I think there was a situation where, um, there was like some issue with my car or something, and a police guy came, but um this man who was trying to like handle the situation basically just offered the police guy like, I don't know, a couple of hours in this hotel room to not press a case on this car, and they just took the deal. So you're like, like top down, it's so shady. And then he couldn't care less about like my parking fine and stuff. But yeah, it's just it's such a paradoxical place that I mean, you think you can like you can't navigate it on the straight and narrow. There will always be a time
Mhm.
where you will mess up. It's designed that way. It's designed. You can't be a
Yeah.
Muslim and live a free life. You cannot.
Well, I kind of have a question for you just about like, you clearly saw all these hypocrisies and just the terrible actions of people, the Muslims around you. Like, did you ever have this feeling that, you know, when it came to just questioning Islam, that this religion can't be true or can't be as good as it claims to be when it's the people who practice it behave this way?
Yeah, I did, but to be very honest, I thought that I was like, okay, Dubai, like, because I had lived in Saudi, right? And I was like, okay, this is like the serious and kind of perverted interpretation of Islam that they employ. Like, women can't drive. There's
Yeah.
beheadings every Jummah. And then coming to Dubai, I was like, okay, they've kind of kept like in my head like the most important elements of Islam. Like we hear the azan, you have all the
Mhm.
holidays, you see abayas and kunduras everywhere and stuff. But like you also have the freedom to choose. So and I just thought they were doing all of this like in a profit-driven capacity. Like they have to open up and they have to be lax. And the dodgy policemen and these people who are engaging in these are just horrible men anyway. Like they're just men behaving badly as they do in any country. So I never formed the link like with Islam until I left. And I think that's just because of how sacred I held it. And I was like, these men aren't representing me and my Islam.
I
These
agree
men are
with you.
just horny men.
Exactly. I thought the same way. I thought, well, Islam is perfect and amazing, and these people, they're just perverting it or distorting it, or they're just sinners.
Yeah, exactly. And then to be honest, like now, obviously, like when I've like read the sources myself, like in a language that I can fully understand, and I've like now I can make the link, no problem. But before it was I completely kind of they were disassociated things. And I
Mhm.
actually thought that low key, I kind of did think that Dubai is handling it well. Like they're trying to retain their Islamic identity and culture and kind of keep those public holidays more sacred and stuff than like Christmas and that kind of thing. But like they have to also open up to the West because how
Yeah.
else are you going to
While
thrive?
still being motivated by greed and capitalism and all that
Yeah,
other good stuff.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
kind
But
of
then
antithetical to what Islam's about, I would say.
exactly, yeah. Like I did even when they were building the Burj Khalifa and stuff. I'm like, why are you? Because like some people are like, why are you
Oh
trying? Are you
man.
trying to compete with God? Like, why? How high are you trying to go into the air? And they always want to be like the biggest. Like everything has to be the biggest or the highest or the tallest or the largest.
Of course, that is something I will say that I always thought was kind of weird about, that, in Mecca, that massive
The
mosque and
Rolex Tower as well. They just
whatever. Like it seemed to me so contrary to what I was taught Islam was about. And I was taught these stories in school about how the first mosque was so modest and simple. It was just a room, and I can't remember more specifics than that, but I think they built it themselves or something like that. And
Mhm.
I thought that's amazing. Like that's all you need. It's not about the building; it's about the people, the community that make it something special. And I just couldn't square that with, oh, new mosque here, massive mosque here, spending millions and millions and millions on them, when there's so like better uses for that money,
Uh-huh.
like helping the poor, helping the needy. It
Yeah.
never made sense to me.
And honestly, like even for example, like the iftars and stuff, like these tents I'm talking about, like the
Yeah.
amount of food wastage and the
Oh,
luxury and the
it's
opulence, it
insane.
almost makes you sick. Like I honestly, you'd feel like a Turkish sultan, like having iftar there because that's like the magnitude of this event. And then when you Google like Dubai charities, like I remember there's a couple of times I wanted to volunteer. There's literally like a handful of them and one or two are sponsored by the sheikh. Like you don't even know where that's going. But I mean, I would literally struggle to find normal things that I would do to like connect with a community or kind of feel like a civilian that's part of a society or that I'm doing my bit for the world because, I'm like, I hate to come back to it, but it was literally just like work hard, play hard, and it's tunnel vision. You see nothing else. And a lot of these like British expats and stuff who go there, it's literally just for that reason. It's like, you'll work hard and then you'll get paid tax-free money, and then you go to brunches all weekend, or you can drink, and you just get really, really caught up in a world where I'd have these moments when I was younger, like I would be driving back from school and I'd see the laborers coming home in like
Mhm.
buses, literally just like packed up in these buses, looking exhausted, and like they. I don't know. You feel something is off. Like if you're sitting there and you're 4x4 and you've got this cushy life, and then you look there and then you see the burj that they've made behind, and you're like, something is wrong here. But A, I'm way too young to get involved or understand, or
Yeah.
Well, that's how I was. That's how I kind of wrote it off when I was younger. I did a presentation at school on the laborers actually, but because our school was owned by like a Habdoor family member, um, if he was going to be present in the school like on that day, so they had my presentation on reserve basically. If Mr. Habdoor was coming, I wasn't allowed to present it because it's basically shitting on the UAE, saying, because I had snippets from like Sky News and stuff where they're talking about
Oh,
work. Yeah, and so
wow.
yeah, it was
I would
crazy.
have never had the courage to do that.
I think honestly, the house I was living in, it my window when I was studying late at night, that I would literally see the bus come in. I'd be studying like late into the night, and I think at 4 a.m. I'd see their bus rock up, and then I'd see them go again at like 8 p.m. and they've been there all day with just like that little cloth, and they're sweating, and it just doesn't seem like a normal way for any laborers to be treated. So I think so when I did it, obviously Mr. Habdoor didn't show up that day, so my teachers let me present, and they were all from not from Dubai. They're all like Western or South African or Australian and stuff. But they basically were like, all of them gave me full marks straight away. But they're like, please don't like ever repeat that you've got full marks on this titled
Wow.
project. It was crazy.
That
Um,
captures the essence of, I think that story captures the essence of what life like is in Dubai, where people applaud you for saying the right thing or thinking the right thing, but don't say it
so
though.
yeah,
Don't say
precisely.
it. It's you
Think
can't.
it, don't say it. Whisper it maybe but
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, honestly, the amount, this is how bad it is in Dubai. Like, I like conversations, normal conversations. If you just drop in like names of people high up in in the power structure, literally my friends would be so paranoid. They're like, put your phone in airplane mode. Like, you can't say that. You can't say that. People to this day cannot share like actual news reports of Princess Latifa or updates about her in Dubai. Like, literally, even if my friend sends me one, I'm like, don't be sharing that from your location in Dubai. And she's like, oh no, it's okay. Like she covered, but it's to that extent. Even on Skype in Dubai, you can't say certain things because you just don't know how deep this like police state kind of infiltrates your social media or anything. That
yeah,
they are generally like state of the art when it comes to this. I think that the biggest thing they're worried about is the revolution or people wanting to kind of change the status quo, which is why they also don't like they have a very interesting system, right, where they don't give people like Emirati nationality no matter how
yeah,
long you've been there.
exactly.
um
You don't get citizenship if you're born there. I was born there, and I have absolutely no rights if I go back there, which I will never return to that country. But if I did go back, I'd go on a visitor's visa like everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. No matter how you were born there, like you said, no matter how many years you spent there, no matter how many years your parents worked there or dedicated, you'll never become a citizen. And now I think they're realizing that because even for businesses, they'd have to have like a 50% Emirati share, right? And now they're realizing that some of their business laws, for example, you could go to jail for a check being bounced. Things like that would
You can go to
really,
jail for declaring bankruptcy.
yeah, yeah.
Debtor's
But
jail, I think they call it.
yeah, they do. We should do a chat on what you can't go to jail for because I don't think we'd find many
Oh
things.
man. Oh man. And I'd always hear rumors about people being deported for saying something or being seen doing something. There, like, it was filled with those rumors. And I wonder how much of that was just encouraged by the government to just keep people in line.
Hmm.
I remember actually my dad, he was convinced that his haircutter, the barber where he went, was an informant for the CID. He was
Ooh,
convinced of it.
yeah.
And I asked him, like, how do you know? And he said, by the questions he asks. So this could,
Wow.
whether it's real or not, there is this clear paranoia that I think everyone has there about don't don't say the wrong thing.
Oh my God, you're so right,
You,
actually.
you
You just
can't
remind
shake it.
No, and you're right because normal people, from the way they ask you things, could be informants. Like that reminded me of this time. I think my dad landed in Dubai airport, and he said that the immigration officer said to him, "Oh, like how was your pool game last week?" And my dad was like, "Sorry, what?" And he knew where my dad had played pool last week, just as immigration guy. And it's like, how insane are your
What?
circles? Yeah, like, oh my goodness. But I guess you guys didn't go.
That's a mystery.
That is but that's the thing, right? You do, like people who have lived there for a long enough time, even though they haven't got the nationality and stuff, they always try and make a CID contact. So it's like the thing to say, right? Like, oh, I know this guy in the CID, like, don't worry, da da da, like, nothing will ever happen in any situation, because the CID is looked at as either screwing you up in like in the worst way possible with the full extent of the law, or getting you out of potentially the worst situation. And honestly, I don't know how reliable these friendships are with them. I think it depends on their mood on that day. I don't know. But yeah, there was definitely a very police state feel to the entire. I mean, honestly, I've never felt more like I'm constantly doing something wrong because I'm Muslim and I'm just trying to like exert my freedom and live how I would had I grown up in England. But I'd always, in Dubai, I've always felt in the back of my head, I'm doing something illegal. Even if it's like me wearing shorts at the beach, or like me hanging out with my like guy friends as well in a group. Like if you do kind of, if like police or Emiratis pass you, you feel a sense of shame, or like I'm not meaning to disrespect anything, but you're just trying to live your life at the same time. So I think it is a very paradoxical place for a teenager to kind of grow up
Yeah.
and kind of get their experiences.
I can't imagine what people who were identified as gay, bi, whatever, went through growing up in a place like that. That's the thing that blows my mind. Like you were
Yeah.
mentioning earlier, and I said earlier, we were both homophobic,
Mm-hmm.
and I could see that there were people who were clearly something within my own school. I could see people who were exhibiting, obscene. I looked at it as obscene, abhorrent behavior, and
Mm-hmm.
think, oh, they're going to hell, they're going to hell. And I think that's the thing about living in a country like that too, where if you're towing the line and you have the right sexuality, the right interests, the right whatever, the right appearance, then life there's pretty good. But any kind of deviation, and that's where you suffer.
And it's not encouraged. Individuality is not encouraged. Expression
No.
isn't encouraged. Like simple things. You can't even get like a tattoo in Dubai. That's kind of like a black market. You have to go to someone's house in an apartment who's got a
Oh, I
machine.
knew
Like,
tons of people who have tattoos.
yeah,
People
but
found
like,
ways.
could they admit? Yeah, you find ways, right? But you can't just like walk it. They don't even have like the option of going to these like tattoo parlors or anything, because you're not even in school. Like they'd be our uniforms were so clinical, and it's just very like, I don't know, that when I see school children here, I'm like, wow, you guys are fully like just it, like it's individualism just shining through, whereas we were like carbon copies of each other. um but yeah, so I think obviously it is a very like, you are navigating two worlds, unless like you're saying you do conform in that country. it's
Mhm.
it's just the way that it's kind of set up to be. So like looking back now, do you hold the place in like the same regard, or do you see it completely differently, and if so, why?
I'm sorry. You're gonna have to repeat the question because I have a cat intruder.
Oh.
Get,
Yeah, I was just saying, do you
ah,
do
I was
you
gonna
now
grab him, but he moved. Anyway,
oh
sorry. You were saying?
do you yeah, do you see Dubai completely differently now? You mentioned that you wouldn't ever
Oh,
return there. Actually, sorry. Just before we get onto that, I just to talk about the homosexuality thing for 1 second more. So I knew somebody who was also like openly kind of homosexual at school, and I mean, he played a very clever game, because he would obviously like live his life, but obviously behind closed doors. And in school, we all knew, but because it's so multicultural, um, like I'm saying, in my heart of hearts, I thought what he was doing in the eyes of God was wrong, but
mhm.
I still couldn't bring myself to like actually like loathe or despise him as a person, because he was like a cool guy. So I was just like, okay, that's his choice and he's going to hell for it, and it's not really my problem, but he's a nice guy. So, but again, I never pushed that thing to like let Islam kind of erode away. I just kind of left it at that. But he moved to the West then, and his Instagram just opened up and he was like able to be who he was. um and the same thing in Saudi. I never ever full on saw anybody who was actually like said the words that, yeah, I'm gay. They would
Mhm.
never say that. Like, you would know it, they would know it. It's assumed, like the whole school kind of knows it, but it's never ever ever mentioned. And I guess in a way you're kind of safe in like the UAE and Saudi if you are hanging like guy to guy or girl to girl. That's well encouraged
Well, you're
anyway. So
supposed to be
you're
with yeah.
supposed to be, yeah, yeah. It's more of a problem if you're like in a heterosexual group. But what did you ever? Because I remember also seeing laborers like walking hand in hand, by the beach and stuff. Did you ever see that?
I would see that. I could be mistaken, but I think that's like a cultural thing. Like
That's what I
some
wasn't
countries,
sure.
men just hold hands.
Yeah, yeah. Because I was wondering if the Dubai police would kind of pick up on that
Interpret
and
that.
be, yeah. But
Oh,
I mean, the amount you see it is like they kind of turn a blind eye to it as well. So, and I don't know if it's because these men are so deprived because they haven't,
I think that's a
been
big part.
home for so long.
I was gonna say that. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the girls' side of it, obviously, but I'd hear rumors again. And actually, I do remember there was this video once that was circulating in my class of a couple of girls from my school who were doing like basically like a lesbian orgy, and I think that
Mhm.
actually was real
Oh
because
my gosh.
the video existed.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's just one of those things where like you hear the same kinds of stories with those boarding schools they had in the UK where
Yeah.
boys wouldn't even necessarily be gay, but they just needed an outlet to express their
Hmm.
sexuality, and when you're surrounded by boys, it's just like human nature. And I think I saw that firsthand amongst classmates of mine who I considered, oh man, that I'd say things that's really gay, that's really faggy, or I'd say whatever, things like that. And I never. Here's the thing that I find kind of shocking about it is I never really, in my own mind, just processed what is it exactly that is so repulsive and repugnant and bad about it.
Hmm.
It just was. It's it's disgusting because it's disgusting. It's wrong because it's wrong,
Yeah,
and
I just had
I
that
always
stupid,
judge them.
it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. That's what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would think, it's so bad.
So I didn't even know if those people were gay, like, in my class. I just stayed away from them and didn't want to engage them and secretly judged them, thinking they're
Hmm.
going to hell, even if I didn't know they were gay or not. Because that's
Yeah.
something, there was no one who was openly gay in my school. There was no
Hmm.
one who would ever admit something like that. It was just clear and obvious that that's a bad thing.
Yeah. I think it's just kind of like a given, you get to that country and you understand how it works. And if your parents have brought you there, they kind of also understand how it works. And you'll just know to whatever you feel inside, no matter how, whichever gender you're attracted to, you'll never ever say the truth if you are gay. It's just not worth it. It's literally codified in the law that it's wrong.
Yeah.
So
You know
you,
what's
you
interesting though? Sorry to
hmm,
interrupt you. It's
no worries.
just, I think one of the key things that changed my mindset on that whole subject was TV shows and movies that I watched while I was living in Dubai.
Hmm.
So things like Will and Grace. I don't think if anyone knows that show. Was
Yeah, I've seen it once or twice.
two of the main characters are gay. That show was never shown there, but there would be gay characters in things like Friends or
Hmm.
Seinfeld or whatever. And I think that was my only real experience of seeing people just in a normal setting being gay, and it helped normalize it for me. And the movie Brokeback Mountain, I think it came out the year before I moved to Canada, and I downloaded it. I
Hmm.
watched it. I didn't see it in theaters. I downloaded it and watched it, and I remember thinking, "Oh, this is kind of gross and whatever," but it completely changed my mindset. And I think
Yeah.
when I actually told classmates that I saw that movie, and they were, "What? Why the hell are you seeing that?" And so even just watching that movie opened opened people's minds to the possibility that am I gay?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the interesting thing about a place like Dubai. As much as it is repressed, there's all this kind of information coming in, whether it's books or movies, TV shows, and they did try to censor some things. I remember The Matrix was censored partially.
Yeah.
I don't even
Well,
know
I was
if that's
thinking
true or
any
not.
cine any movie
Maybe it
that came
wasn't in
out in
Dubai. Actually, I need to fact check
okay.
myself on that.
Yeah. Because no, they'd censor any movie though. Like if any movie that came out in the cinema, like you would not have seen the same version of Brokeback Mountain in the cinema. It's literally
Oh, that movie
any
wasn't in theaters. I don't
yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. They
Do you
wouldn't show
know?
it.
Do you know Bruce Almighty, the Jim Carrey movie?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't think that movie was in Dubai, and when that movie has a character like Morgan Freeman is God in that movie.
Yeah. No. They don't allow. Yeah, they just literally don't even show these. And the ones they do are. I remember seeing a movie in Dubai and then seeing it here, and I was like,
Oh
I
my
missed
God.
so
Oh
much.
yeah. Oh, I always tell people this story. Pulp Fiction. So
Yeah.
it's supposed to be one of the greatest movies of all time. And
Hmm.
growing up, I'd heard about it, and they were bringing it to Dubai One, which is the English language TV
Yeah.
channel. And I saw the movie, and it was really short. It was an hour long or something.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, I didn't understand the plot. What's going on in this movie? Why is this movie so highly regarded? And it's only until I saw it again years later, I think in university, where I saw the
Mhm.
full 2.5 hour movie, and I realized, oh my God, they
That's how much I miss.
censored more than half of that movie. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. It's
Oh
so
wow.
bad. Like even on the radio, for example, there's a song. It's like I think it's I like to I don't know. I like to get drunk or I like to smoke weed or something.
Something like
Dubai
that. Okay.
Radio like bleeped it out and was like, I like to go out. I like to stay up late. It was so cringe. That they're literally having to like water down
Oh
radio,
man.
cinema, everything. And it's like you really have no idea what your public are like.
Yeah.
Because yeah, we'll everyone's got their ways around everything. So yeah, sorry, just wanted to kind of get back to, obviously you said that you would never kind of go back there now.
Never.
If you're comfortable telling us why you feel that way and kind of how you feel about your entire time there and where you are now.
Hmm. Well, in a way, it's what they want. They don't want people. I don't think they want people like me coming back.
You've seen
They
what they've done to people like you, so yeah,
I well, the
definitely
thing
don't.
is, just to play the devil's advocate, I kind of
Hmm.
understand their mentality of wanting to protect their own sense of nationality and citizenhood. Can you imagine if they just gave everyone there, like similar to a country like Canada, if they gave everyone, I think in Canada it takes depends. I think it's changed now, but you get permanent residency and then you can apply for citizenship, and can take 4 or 5, I don't know how many years now, but it is possible. If they did that in the UAE, the actual original population would become the minority. I think it's
Uh-huh. But they
seventy
already are.
percent
There's such a small percentage of them, and then
Yes,
also,
but people
it,
don't have roots there, and I think that's
yeah.
intentional. People go, they work for 10, 15, 20 years, and then they move
Mm.
back to wherever they came from in
that
most cases.
that's how they like it, right? So then, and
Yes.
like if you're an Emirati woman, for example, you can't, if you marry a non-Emirati man, your citizenship is like your children won't get an Emirati citizenship. So they're encouraging Emirati women to marry Emirati men. And yeah, I just, because the population is so low anyway, these families who have come from like back in the day, when Dubai was literally like
A
one
desert.
road in a
Yeah.
desert, yeah, like these huge families like the Joythram supermarket families and all of the, you're like, they have literally kind of
They help
made
build the country. Yeah.
yeah. And if they're expected to also just, they're Indian, I think, as a family, right? If they're expected to just
Yeah.
kind of take their passports and go back home, they've made this country what it is, one of the
Doesn't matter.
top. Yeah,
They
exactly.
don't look at it that way. They don't.
And
They
then they
just
just
don't.
keep subsidizing the Emiratis, right? They pay less diwa, they pay less, everything is
They pay
subsidized
it.
for them.
Oh. If you're Emirati, then you're set up. You're golden
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to be honest with you, I wouldn't go back because I see no reason to. So my
Hmm.
parents, they stayed there for a long time, just working, but they recently moved to Europe. So I have no
Nice.
family there. I have no ties there.
Nice.
Um,
Thank God we're having this chat now.
yeah, I don't have any connection to anything. There's no sense of community there for people like us, like expats.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
I,
also fleeting, the
yeah,
whole, everybody knows this is transitory because,
exactly.
yeah. And
They encourage that kind of mindsets, though.
they do. And like my friends who are there still, and they're trying to kind of like live normal lives and date, for example, like using dating apps and stuff, they actually say like it's a problem. Like even with these Emirates air hostesses and like this whole thing of like dating in Dubai is everybody knows they're just there for like a short span of time and then they're
What
going to
must that
leave.
be like?
So yeah, so
Oh
nobody's
man.
willing to like form these proper connections and stuff. And it's like a real struggle because Dubai is almost like a transitory hub. They offer you nothing long term. Like I'm sure you're aware now, like now that I've left Islam, I would never think about, going there or even flying Emirates across the country. Like I have no ties to it as well. Like you said, I really, really look back at my time there and think I had some good times. I also had some really bad times where I saw the face of that country for what it is. But honestly, it's got like some of the best food in the world that I've
That
ever
is true.
had.
That is true.
That's one thing I really miss is the food.
I miss Lebanon, if you remember
Oh
Lebanon.
yes,
Oh man.
Lebanon up. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
used to have one of those every day. Yeah.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh.
but yeah, I kind of I think it's the same for me where obviously I spent a lot of my childhood there and I have some good memories.
Hmm.
The the good memories I have don't really have anything to do with the place though. It's to do with things I did with family or things I accomplished more
Hmm.
than wow, well, this is the street I grew up in. I have no
Yeah.
yearning or desire to even connect with my old classmates because I felt like I couldn't really connect with any of them. I just
Yeah.
couldn't. Yeah. So no part of me misses it, and I say that genuinely. And it's a strange feeling that a place where you spent most of your childhood and until recently, like almost half my life,
Hmm.
has no hold or sway over you. It's just this complete and utter indifference and apathy towards it. And
Wow.
I'm sure that that's impacted me in a lot of ways that I haven't really been able to process till now.
Hmm.
Like I don't care. I don't really believe in politics. I'm pretty cynical. I'm Palestinian, so that it's part of it too. But I'm cynical about participating in the political process. I'm cynical about government. I'm cynical about a lot of things. And it took me a long time to kind of build my own community here in Canada because I just didn't have one in Dubai. It was just me, my
Mm.
immediate family, and a couple of like a smattering of family friends who I didn't even really know or like in the first place. It was more
Yeah.
just like out of obligation. And so I think that was the last thing you asked me. What I think about it today, I'll just say what I always tell people when they ask me about Dubai. Good place to visit for like a week. Don't live there though. Don't move there with your kids.
No, it's definitely
It's
not a place to bring
very
up your
no. It's
children.
I wouldn't even be able to tell you how it could impact your kids if you were to move them there because when I when I grew up there, I didn't think life was weird there. It was all I
Thank you.
knew.
Neither did I. Please, the
It was
people
all
who
I
are
knew.
listening, this is it. You get caught up in a bubble and it's all you know. And you have to have like these honestly low-level culture shocks by coming back to the West or moving around to be like, that wasn't normal.
Yeah. I just thought it was normal to just not engage with any other race besides your own. Uh,
Yeah.
like I didn't really have any Indian friends. I didn't have Pakistani friends, Filipino. I kind of looked down on all of them. That's like another thing.
That's actually
But
what I wanted to ask you. Did you notice, obviously, I mean it's pretty noticeable, but I think it's more noticeable in like the workplace and stuff. But as a teenager, did you notice like the racial
of
hierarchy that's
course, how can you
obvious?
not?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all around you. It's in the way people
All around
interact with
you.
each other in the mall, on the street. It would be in the things people around me would say, things my teachers would say, like anybody.
Wow.
The hierarchy, how I would quickly explain it is Emiratis on the top.
Mhm.
Then you have certain Westerners like Americans,
Americans,
British people.
Brits, Germans, I think, 'cause they do a lot
Yes,
of their
yeah. And then
construction
you
projects.
have certain Arabs, uh, Arabs from the Gulf region, and maybe the part where I come from, like the Levant, like Palestinians, Lebanese, Syrians, and then the
Then
other Arab.
Iranians, I'd like
Oh
down.
wait, we're not even there yet. No, no, because
Yeah.
Iran and the UAE have this whole thing, and then you have
Beef. Yeah.
maybe North Africans,
Uh-huh.
and then you have maybe Iranians, and then you have. It's tough to say if the Filipinos were lower or not than the. I think Indians
I
and
think they're
Pakistanis were at
about,
the bottom. I think they were at the
yeah.
bottom. I think
Yeah.
Filipinos were considered a notch above because I don't know if you noticed that they would trust having Filipinos in service jobs, customer care jobs that they
Yeah.
would never give to a migrant worker from Sri Lanka or India.
Also because I think like the Filipinos generally would speak better English as well. And they're
They
like,
generally be better educated. Yeah,
yeah, they would be. And so they'd be well, like better equipped to deal with those jobs. Whereas South Asians were more just like laborers, straight to like
yeah.
just doing the physical work. But yeah, so exactly that there's that hierarchy, and even that you become so used to. Like literally, you walk up to a pharmacy, you know who you're going to get behind the desk. You go into a hospital, you know who you're going to get behind the desk. You go to a labor camp, you know you're going to find. It's just so it's
Stratified.
yeah, it really
Yeah.
and it's so intricately woven into daily life that it does just kind of like get into the back of your mind when you live there and you're like on autopilot and you're not realizing that there's some serious
Yeah.
societal issues like operating. And like I think I said to you when we had that chat that we weren't able to put on air, but like even just the passport that you hold holds so much meaning for these people. Like they'll
Yes.
look at your passport and then they'll determine the way to talk to you and the salary that you're paid, regardless of whether
Yes.
you're educated and to the exact same level of like
Yeah.
if there was an Indian who'd got like the same degree that I had, I could be paid threefold more just because of my passport. And Dubai sanctions this.
Yeah.
And they're also like there's just things that would never happen in the West. You know, like on your CV, people have the audacity to like ask for a picture and like your age and your marital status. Whereas here, that's all considered discriminatory.
Mhm.
So it's just like relearning like basic tenets of like human privacy and freedom and
And rights. Yeah.
non-discrimination. Yeah.
It's I should say though that like I'm not saying that Canada is some kind of utopia. I'm not saying places I've been to in Europe are perfect or amazing or anything. It's just in that country, it's glaring. It's more glaring. You could argue whether that's better or worse than hidden racism or not.
Mhm.
Uh, I would say it's of all the places I've been to around the world, it's the most racist place I've ever been to.
Yeah, I would agree with
Yeah.
that. Yeah, definitely. And that's hard. That's hard to say because you're like, what was I doing as part of that society for so long? But I think, like, honestly, leaving Islam as well has helped to kind of. This is a certain guilt I feel. I think it's still a bit of a hang up for me that like I knew something was off, but I never clocked at the time. Now I see it all and I can kind of like step back and I'm not emotionally attached to the
Hmm.
place like you. Honestly, I've tried to just be like, that's one of the I've gone to so many countries around the world and you will not experience some of the things you experience in the UAE overtly happening in front of your face and everyone is just part of this pantomime. um
Theater. Yeah.
yeah, and like and it's interesting because honestly the actual police force themselves are made up of a lot of like Yemenis, Balochis, Omanis. They're not even like actual Emiratis. A lot of them, like when they all can speak Urdu and bits of like Farsi or like they really. I don't know why they did that, but I think that
It's
was
not
like
a
a.
glamorous job.
It's not a glamorous job. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah, that's why they did that. That's
There's a
true.
reason there aren't any Emiratis who are migrant workers,
Yeah, yeah,
or like the
exactly.
construction workers, I should say.
Yeah, yeah, and I think obviously like it really played on my mind as well because in Saudi it was similar, but now they've just started like the Saudiization of like their own labor force and stuff, which we'll see how far that goes. But yeah, it's one of the most racist places. So kind of just moving on towards that, now that you've left and you see it all differently, I'm guessing if you said it's one of the most racist places that you think in the world, do you also think that the human rights atrocities and stories we hear coming out of Dubai are like a serious concern and that they're just like not because I actually came across this organization that was speaking against human rights detentions and stuff in Dubai, and even them they're actually apparently there are a bunch of people from the UAE who are like streaming this thing secretly to try and just kind of fix the human rights situation. And I was mind blown how this exists because I wanted to work for them.
Hmm.
But in general, like now where I'm coming from, I can see the glaring human rights issues across the board. Yeah, whether it's the sheikh's own daughter, whether it's laborers, whether it's maids being abused, whether it's women not getting their divorces, whether it's anything. Do you now see Dubai as a bit of a human rights disaster, or?
It's a disaster in many ways.
Mhm,
I would say it's as a society, it's completely bankrupt.
mhm. Wow,
Um,
that's deep. Yeah, it's
I mean,
deep.
sure, yes, you can throw in human rights issues with that, but it's like it's not the root cause of what the problem is there. The problem there is just a government that's just not accountable to anyone. It's basically a dictatorship, a police state, as we've talked about already.
Yes.
So this is the thing I always find when I'm talking about countries in the Middle East, and I'm not just singling out the UAE here. The UAE is a better place to live and does give you more rights than other parts of the Middle East, only because other parts of the Middle East are even more horrifying.
Yeah.
But just like as one person, I always feel like, what can I do? Like, uh, it's such a shame because I know there's a lot of people like me, like you, who they live in the West and they know how things are bad back there, and we want to help, we want to change things, but it feels like this insurmountable task, this mountain that you'll never be able to climb, to go there and try to change things. Like, would I risk my life going back to the UAE, this country that doesn't even want me,
Please don't.
to try and
No.
change things there? You know how quickly I would disappear, go to jail, or I don't know what would
Yeah.
happen to me.
You'd be locked up in
And
Alawiyah somewhere in the middle of the desert.
yeah, but at the same time, I have that guilt of
Mm,
I live in the safety of here, but I can't go back to where I was born. I can't go back to my ancestral homeland because it's just too much for anyone to fix. And
mm,
at the same time, when everyone else thinks this way, that's how it keeps perpetuating. We'll keep all those dictators in place. We'll
mhm,
keep oppressing people. Um, those countries, like the people in power, it's not about helping their people. It's about keeping the status quo. It's about keeping themselves in the seat of power for as long as possible. And so, yes, it's a disaster, and I don't know. I just don't know what else to say about it.
mm.
It almost feels like a lost cause.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. And I mean, just in general, do you like because I mean, I don't feel as much of like, oh, I didn't get to have like a normal kind of teenage childhood as I would have in the West, because it was a very similar experience, but let's say with like an Islamic dome around it. So it was within limits, but it was pretty close to normal. A couple of things that really stand out now, but I think it's because I've left Islam as well. But like, you know, just in Islamic lesson, I think once our teacher showed us like a video of like somebody who was like supposedly possessed by a jinn.
Um,
And I was like 16, and it was such a horrible video, like the sound of like the noise, because I'd been to Mecca previously and like I'd seen this woman getting dragged towards the Kaaba, but she was like like these crazy voices were coming out of her, and like four men, like two were holding her arms and two were holding her legs, and she was like kicking them off. So I don't know like what the hell was happening there. They were like taking her towards the Kaaba, and like her screams were getting louder. So I had already like not had a good experience with like supposed jinn possessions or whatever, right? I honestly now look back and think she was in the middle of like a fit, and it was severe, and they should not have been doing that to her. But um when he showed us this video, me and my friends actually ran out of class, and we just like literally went to the playground, and we were like, what the hell, like, who does this happen to? Could this happen to us? Why did jinns come? Like, and you're trying to like avoid things at night, avoid walking under trees, like it's just don't talk about them, because then like it was such a
oh man,
weird.
I
Yeah,
remember doing that too. Now that you mention it,
really.
I remember having this fear of Jin just coming out from a slit from whatever dimension they're in and just
Uh-huh.
abducting me. I do remember having
Oh my
those
god.
thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Thanks for
literally.
bringing that back.
No, but now hopefully you can laugh at it, right? Because I was
Yeah.
like, what was that school day? Because I really was traumatized. I went back home to my parents and I was like, guys, there's this video on YouTube. Like, I have to show you, but I can't watch it again. But like, please tell me, like, how do we like not ever let this happen to any of us? And like now I'm just like, that is not a normal school experience. Why are they showing me that? And why are we like, you know, and it's not even like it's not out of choice or anything. This is just because of what your last name is on your passport or what your dad supposedly.
Mhm.
They don't even care if your dad identifies as it or if you there's no room in the UAE for personal choice. You can't say I'm Muslim, but I like I don't like want to hear the khutbah, or like I don't want to, you know,
No,
whatever, or I want to have a drink. Like you can't do those things.
you have to toe the
They
line.
yeah,
Yeah.
they assume who you are from your name, and it's just like that's what you are forever. And like you said, never actually a part of the land. You're just there to make them some money, make yourself some money, and then just leave, really.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think Honestly, I think we've covered most of living in Dubai. Is there anything else that you'd like? I mean, now for me, like, I think human rights was like a great thing to
Yeah,
end on, but because I don't know about the whole like how much you've been following the Latifa situation and stuff, but
I haven't, to be honest. No.
oh, okay. So even for something like that, it was like her previous sister Shamsa who was actually kidnapped off the streets of Cambridge many years before her. But I was living in Dubai when that happened, and I remember like I was so scared to even look into it because again I don't know like what they're tracking and stuff. But now coming here, like I have like they show it on TV, they show documentaries about it. They show Dubai to be in like a really bad light. They just say it for what it is. They talk about banning the sheikh from coming to be part of like the Ascot royal races that he's got a massive stake in with the Queen. So like England does talk about sanctioning UAE in different ways, which is just it's so refreshing
I
to
suppose
see.
that's an improvement.
Definitely. Again, like at the high level, I'm not sure if it will happen here because the royal family and the sheikhs are kind of like, in each other's pockets. But the fact that the normal actual outcry from like the public, like she was trending on Twitter here when they showed that documentary again. So, and like people are waking up, people are realizing that, that this is a city of skyscrapers and glitter, and not all that glitters is gold. Like there is something very dark behind this facade.
It's a mirage, to
It
use a
is.
desert
Very,
reference.
yeah, touche. It's a mirage. And a very scary one, but I'm glad we're out of it. And the food shall be missed, but the rest can.
I'm willing to let go of the food to just not, yeah, to just not deal with the life there anymore. Yeah, it's a weird thing. Yeah, a huge part of my life, and I don't want to go back to it. I don't miss it.
Yeah.
But the attitude I have is I had to go through that to become who I am today,
Mhm.
and so the challenges made me who I am.
So, what do
I
you
guess I
do when
can't
you hear
complain.
some Canadians saying, like, oh, I'm going to Dubai next week for holiday? Oh, you're fine with the holiday thing. You're like, just
Go
don't
for a
live there.
holiday. Yeah. I mean, I suppose there is the argument that you can make that you're supporting or enabling a police state or human rights abusers. You could
Mhm.
probably say that about most countries in the world, though,
That's
if
true.
we're being completely honest and impartial, including
Yeah.
my own country. So there's
Yeah.
that.
And honestly, only if you're comfortable answering this, but how did you feel when the UAE kind of started engaging in business with Israel as a state? And
It's
w
completely unsurprising.
yeah.
It was known. I knew that. I don't know about how many people knew, but it was known by a lot of people that the UAE was pretty cozy with Israel, and there were rumors about them allowing Mossad agents in the country to assassinate people and all kinds of things like that. So, I think the only thing that was different was that their secret dealings with Israel were now out in the open.
Hmm.
And so I don't know, all the posturing about protect Palestine or protect the Ummah or whatever.
And nobody
It's
with Israel stamps on their passport can ever enter the UAE. Like they had this
Oh,
whole thing.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's all that's all posturing.
Hmm.
As I said earlier, for them, the people, the powers that be, all that matters for them is to stay in power. They don't care about Arab unity. They don't care about Muslim solidarity. It's You can see that in their the feuds between Qatar and Saudi Arabia, or how uh, the Gulf countries barely, if any, barely took any Syrian refugees. You
Yeah.
can look at the numbers of how many they took
Yeah.
to show uh, all their care for what was happening there, because it's all geopolitical. It has nothing to do with Islam, which I think is an argument that Muslims will make, that these countries are not a reflection of what Islam is like.
Hmm.
They have left Islam,
Hmm.
and I guess you could make that argument no matter what, which is why it's such a good one that they tend to use.
Yeah, no, it's true, and you're right. Like there's so much complacency. There's no such thing as the Arab unity per se. Like, I think at one point when I just come back from university or was just starting, I volunteered for this charity called the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, and they were actually like transporting children from Gaza who were like seriously injured to Dubai to like stay with these host families while they were like they'd have surgeries and stuff.
Mhm.
The uptake was so low for a country with people who have like some of the absolutely comfortable amounts of disposable income, and the up you think that this would be a country that would be like guys, let's just open our borders, everyone get involved. There was no public like coverage of this initiative. There was literally like 3 or 4 kids that would come and get some surgeries done, and that was considered like a huge deal. Um, and it's just hard because when you see charity now in the West and you see organizations and NGOs, you're like, this is how a country runs, when there's not just like the amount that I can count on my finger, and 3 of them are owned by the sheikh himself. It's just, yeah, it really, really does open your eyes to a lot. So, but I completely agree with you not being surprised. It was kind of common knowledge in
No.
the UAE that like Dubai and Israel have been, the UAE and Israel are pretty cozy.
Oh, they all are. So I guess we know what the exceptions are, but for the most part, they just want what's for their own interest.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then is there anything else you'd like to kind of add to this conversation? Because I've
Ooh.
got through all of our Dubai teenage years.
all our talking points.
But I do
Oh
realize I
man.
have to let you go soon, so I just want
Oh,
to make
it's
sure.
almost time. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many stories I could tell. I didn't even tell you the other embarrassing. Maybe I'll save it for another time. I have another embarrassing, shame-filled story to do with my upbringing.
We have time for one story if you want to
One
enlighten
story.
us today.
Well, I guess it's not much of a story. It was just like this thing that happened. As I was talking about earlier, I just developed this shame-based relationship with my own sexuality, with sex, with women, whatever.
Hmm.
That it took me a long time to get over. Like, even after I left Islam, it was hard to shake. Like, where I felt like if I was interested in someone sexually, that like something to hide, something to not talk about. So there was this one time in school. I think I was in 11th or 12th grade, and our school had computers, like as part of the school program or whatever, and
Hmm.
computers, laptops you could take home with you. And sure enough, 16, 17-year-old boys, we started sharing porn in between our computers. And there was this one day where a couple of solemn looking teachers came into the class
Oh
unannounced. I
no.
think you know where this is coming, where this is going. Sorry. And they confiscated all of our laptops.
Oh
I
my
jokingly
God.
call it the Great Porn Raid now. And
Yeah.
the worst part of it was, I had a little bit. I didn't have much, thankfully, but I had enough to incriminate me. The worst part of it was, for me, that the shame of everyone, every authority figure, and as I mentioned before, that pleasing the authority figures was the most important thing to me.
Mhm.
Now all of them knew about my shameful, dirty, dark secret, because
Yeah.
the school found the material on my. I think it was on my desktop. Like, it wasn't even hidden.
Oh my
It was just in a folder on my
gosh.
desktop. Yeah. So they found it and they called my parents, and
They
so
called your
everyone knew.
parents. Oh,
Oh yeah, my brother knew. Everyone knew.
oh my
It
God.
did make it easier that I wasn't the only one who was dinged.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would have been
Power
bad if
in
I was the
numbers.
only one.
Yeah.
I remember some kids got wind of it and deleted what they had. I don't know. Like, they had better intel than I did, I guess. Uh,
Yeah.
but I
Why
remember
didn't
my
you get the
dad.
memo?
I don't know. I was in my bedroom, just like wallowing in my shame and my guilt.
Oh.
And my dad knocked on the door, and he told me, you're lucky that they didn't call your mother to tell her
Hmm.
about this, because when I went, they called the parents to the school as well. So my dad had to come to the school for
Oh.
this. And he said, "You're lucky, because there were mothers who came to the school, and you should have seen them. And you almost put your mother through that." And
Oh my
even at
gosh.
the time, I remember thinking, like whatever. Like, this is human nature. Like,
Yeah.
so I
You were
was so
like,
caught. I was so caught in between these two modes of guilt and like, wow, I almost put my mom through that, but my mom knows what I did. Can I
uh-huh.
ever look at her in the eyes again? But at
Yeah.
the same time, I just thought it was also ridiculous. But I had to be in the wrong, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what everyone, all the authority figures are saying. And yeah, just looking back now, I think it was actually a good thing that I did that, because if you think about it, that wasn't very compliant of me. If I was really being compliant, I would have been like, "Oh no, this is unacceptable,"
Hmm.
and been the only one in my class who didn't do it. But uh, I just reached a point where, you know what, it's not hurting anyone.
Hmm.
It is what it is. It's human nature, and I just got tired of suppressing it, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. That honestly, I mean, it makes sense when you're taking boys at that age and expecting them to be so like just contrary to what their nature is telling them to do, or your biological body is like telling you to do, it will you're gonna
It's
crack at
horrible.
some point. Yeah,
It's horrible.
you'd much rather, I mean, if you just take a different approach, like what the, a more kind of like sex ed based approach, and like teach you about your body and say you're gonna get these urges, this is gonna happen. It just seems like such a better way to deal with it than to like invoke fear and shame and like confiscate things and get your parents involved. And I mean, your dad is a G because he didn't get your mom involved.
Oh, well, but
So he
she knew
saved
all about it. She never talked to me about it, though.
that
Thankfully.
still saved you something,
Yeah. Oh
honestly.
man. Oh man.
That's a conversation you would
And
rather not
it
have.
was interesting what my dad said. I just remembered what he told me as well. He said, "Do those things. Okay, it's okay to do those things, but don't do them with school property."
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
so it's like the kind of thing of, I guess,
Yeah, why didn't
do
you
it,
guys
but
did you
keep it
not have
secret.
yeah, yeah. But why didn't you guys have did you not have your personal laptop at that time? Why did everyone suddenly use school laptops?
Yeah, it was our only laptop. So it was.
Oh.
See, this is the kind of the BS thing about it was we paid for it, and
Hmm.
it was ours, but it was we had to sign something saying it was school property.
Oh
Yeah.
God, okay.
So yeah, there's that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, that's horrible. I'm so sorry
Yeah.
you had to go through these things.
Oh,
That
and
is
my
just
dad would bring it up at like family gatherings and all that.
what?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
No. Can you tell him like it scarred you enough? You've like
It's just the way my father is. I just accept it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, just before we wrap up, I did actually want to ask you one just like leading question on from this is
Sure.
did that kind of then obviously make you really apprehensive when you got older and you kind of did want to engage with women and maybe like, date or have a
Of
relationship?
course.
Did you have to kind of like learn years of interacting with women that you would ordinarily have done had you not been in a school like that?
Not quite. There was, I would say, I carried the guilt aspect or the shame aspect of it,
Hmm.
even though I knew that I shouldn't be anymore. Like, in the sense of, um, I would be interested in a girl, but I wouldn't want to say something because that would be admitting that I'm interested in her, and that's
Weak
embarrassing.
or
Or
embarrassing? Okay.
embarrassing, yeah. So
Okay.
the shame carried over, and
Hmm.
but at the same time, because I didn't really have those experiences when I was, 15, 16, 17, I was very motivated to finally have them when I was able to do so. So it was kind of a little bit of
Make
both.
up for lost time.
Make up for lost time, yeah,
Yeah.
precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So and so do you think that was a like do you feel like those years restricted you in terms of how like you would have
Mm,
acted otherwise in interpersonal relationships with the opposite
definitely.
gender? Yeah.
Definitely. This is the thing I don't understand about this whole mentality that that kind of society has, where you keep the women and men separate, but then how are they going to interact each other when the time comes? There's this whole mentality of, well, you'll know what to do when the time comes, or
Mhm.
you're too immature to be able to process these things yet. But what
Mhm.
I think happens is that it leads to dysfunctional people who don't know how to, they're not in tune with themselves sexually or whatever otherwise, and they don't know how to interact with people that they could be potentially interested in romantically, because they either have to hide it, or they just literally don't know how to do it because they've never done it.
Yeah.
How's that the good basis for a relation, like a marriage,
Uh-huh.
when you don't have any interactions with the opposite sex, or whatever, and you don't even know what you like in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Just
No, I think
roll the
you're right.
dice.
Yeah. And just kind of like, like roll with the punches as they come, like you'll figure it out. But I think I completely agree with you. I think this whole like purity culture is so detrimental and segregating the sexes. Like I honestly think I'm just so much more confident in dealing with like, talking to the opposite sex and stuff because it's never not been a thing. So once you separate
Once you make it a thing, it becomes a thing. It's
it becomes
like
a
a
thing.
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly, for
Yeah.
sure. And because of the segregation in itself, like you've hypersexualized now the opposite gender anyway. So now they're seen as literally the other. and you're like, how do I approach the other? How do I connect with the other? How do I have a healthy relationship with the other? Because this is all new territory you're trying to navigate. It's not like common nature where you're just kind of, it should be where you interact with a guy and a girl in the exact same way, and you have like friendships and not. But this whole purity culture, segregating them, these like the non-co-ed schools, really enforces like a sense of the other, and like the sexualization, and you're almost like you're literally timid because you don't know how to act with them in a way that's like still true to yourself, because you like
You don't even know what
genuinely.
true to yourself means because you haven't experimented, you haven't tried things.
Wow, that's deep. Yeah, there's actually
How
so
could you?
much.
How could you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Wow.
I don't
God.
understand how we haven't reached the point yet as a society where we haven't learned that repressing things like that, like sexuality, doesn't work. It
Hmm.
just doesn't work.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
And
think
yet
this
we
is
keep
very
trying it.
like. Yeah, and I think Islam as well, like, and it just like being a devout Muslim kind of celebrates this fact as well. Like, I remember once my cousin came to visit us in Dubai, and I was in an international school, and he's quite like, very devout religious, and I remember him saying to me like, a girl and a guy can't be friends. And I was like, what are you talking about? Of course they can. Like, I have so many guy friends. And he's like, no, there's always something more. And that's he's come from a similar experience where complete segregation, a girl is just for one thing, and like that's it. You can't be friends, you can't have other discussions, you can't have normal relationships, they can't just be a classmate, you can't hang out, and there's always something more. And I think there's this peddling of this narrative of like, that's the purest way to do it, and when it's meant to happen, it will happen. It's just it's
How is it gonna happen
how
when
is
you're
it
just
gonna
avoiding all the possible ways where it could happen?
I guess you just like close your eyes and say Bismillah. I don't know.
It'll magically appear. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, I have more stories, but I think I'll save them for another time.
Yeah, no, let's definitely do this
Yeah,
again, because
yeah.
it's honestly been so great, and I do know you have to go.
I do have some, like, I'm just curious to know, is there anyone in the chat who has any questions? I think I could do like another 10 minutes
Okay.
if there's any questions.
I can see people like having just full on discussions at the moment.
Wow.
Guys, if there is anyone, or girls, I hate saying just guys, I need to change that. Guys and girls, if there's anyone in the chat that has any questions for Secular Spirit, he has about 12 minutes, and then he's got to be somewhere. So please kind of roll in with your questions now if you have any. I guess you can feel free to get semi-personal with him because he's in a mood for sharing.
Yeah, apparently. Oh my
Okay,
god, like
somebody.
18-year-old me could never imagine just going on the internet and just telling all these like mortifying stories about myself.
Your
Is that
your
personal growth?
liberation right now is I feel liberated from hearing your liberation. I think this is nothing but personal growth. This is incredible. I know how hard it is to like talk about it, like, actual details of your personal life, particularly intimate details. And honestly, I really, really rate you and respect you
Thank you.
for coming out there, showing your face. And then again, we're talking against Islam, and we're talking against the UAE, like two things that are bound to get us in a lot of trouble. So yeah, honestly, mad respect. Okay, we've got a few
Oh,
questions,
we
I
do.
think, coming
Okay.
in. Or let me see, I see question marks. Okay, that one is not appropriate.
Oh,
Okay, one says, I
I'm
would
curious
love
to
to.
know what that is. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think people are just asking about my relationship status,
Oh,
which is just not appropriate at the moment. Loved you two chatting. It was interesting. Okay. Sees to know is asking, or just saying, I'd love to have you both on my podcast. How can I contact both of you? So you can contact me via email, holyhumanist@gmail.com. It's on my channel link. And Secular Spirit, would you like to let them know how to contact
yeah,
you?
you can. I have a Gmail as well, thesecularsspirit@gmail.com. You can also message me on Twitter, on Leaving Islam or Secular Spirit, whatever's easiest for you.
Okay, perfect. I hope that answers your question. There's another question. I'm just going to throw it your way because it's like a lucky
Okay.
draw, yeah? Someone's saying, what's the best countries for ex-Muslims to migrate to?
Oh, I've actually gone this question before.
Uh-huh.
It's tough for me to say because I haven't been to that many places. I've been mainly to Europe and North America. I'd say biased, obviously, but you can't really go wrong with Canada. Uh, there is a significant Muslim community here, but you don't have the same issues and tensions that you'll find in the US or in Europe. And I
Yeah.
think you are pretty free to just be whoever you are in Canada, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of the world. I know Muslims here, some of whom know I'm not no longer religious, and it's completely fine. I think as long as you're independent financially, then you're probably Canada's a probably good place to be because then you're not beholden to anyone.
Yeah. If you can handle the cold, Canada is
If you can handle the
definitely
cold,
a
yeah,
good place
yeah.
to be. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, and I just think obviously anywhere in the West really, where like it's more or less a secular constitution in practice, and like free speech is allowed, then you're more or less good to go. Just don't go anywhere repressive. Um, okay, I don't know if some of these questions are appropriate, but
Oh my, what are
have you
these questions?
have you ever been threatened by authority figures for speaking out? I'll obviously just touch on
Yeah, go
that real
ahead.
quick. I mean,
You have
I've
a whole
not
story of
because,
that.
but I mean, I think in terms of like speaking out, it's really early days. I'm literally this is like out the first live stream, and this is the first time on my own, like without being on like ex-Muslim UK TV or Haris Sultan's channel, that I'm actually like getting a fellow Dubaier and we're both shitting on Dubai. So who knows? Maybe we brought up a lot of sensitive things in this topic. So if the UAE security is as good as they say, they might have us on, I don't know, some kind of radar after this.
Oh,
But no,
they
we've
have the keywords we've been saying on their some kind of
yeah.
AI map. I don't know.
Yeah. So, but no, thankfully, as of yet, I've never been threatened by authority figures. Secular Spirit, have you?
No, neither have I. It's one of the main reasons I wanted to just do this stuff with a pseudonym or
Hmm.
before I wouldn't even show my face was just to avoid that kind of scrutiny.
Hmm.
I've gotten threats and that kind of stuff before, but just from random people on the internet, so nothing that's really scared me
The
yet.
usual trolls, then, yeah, pretty
Yep.
much. Okay, great. Oh, we've got some questions rolling in. Okay. Oh, we've got Haris Sultan with us. He's
Oh,
asking, is Secular Spirit looking to make Islam debunking videos?
my basic plan is to start with just sharing some of my thoughts on Islam. I guess you could say that's debunking it. In my first few videos, I have one out already. Harris, if you want to check it out. I'm gonna do a couple on Islam, and then I'm gonna move more broadly to just talk about spirituality and perhaps other religions as I learn more about them. But yeah, in the
Okay.
beginning, it's gonna be mainly Islam.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you. And thanks, Haris, for joining us. Very cool. Secular, how often have you visited Palestine?
I have actually never been there. It's a kind of like a tough, sensitive thing for me because, to be completely honest, I'm a bit scared of going there.
Hmm.
Uh, I think the main reason is because I would be going there as a young male with a Canadian passport with obvious Palestinian roots. My family has a history there, a negative history of the Israeli government, and I'm so paranoid about going to a country where they're literally trained and geared to hate people like me.
Yeah.
And so it is on my list of things I have to do before I die. I suppose I'm just waiting for a time in my life where I have the freedom and the flexibility to just, whatever happens to me happens. I definitely want to
Ooh.
do that before I have a family, I think. So it's something I very much want to do, but I have not done it yet. And I think that's common for a lot of Palestinians who live all over the world. I think you'll find a lot of them have actually never been there.
No, it's true. Yeah. Well, one of my best friends is also from a similar background to you and exactly the same situation. So, yeah, I completely get that. Um, right. We've got time for a couple more questions, Secular
Yeah,
Spirit. I'll try
yeah.
and fire them your way. Um, okay. There's another one. I'm not sure who these are directed at, so I'll just let you answer and then let myself answer as well. Haris Sultan's back with who's Secular Spirit's favorite ex-Muslim YouTuber?
Oh, That's a
After
good
Holy
question.
Humanist, of course. You know.
Yep. What you said. I don't have one favorite. I do have a couple. I like Apostate Aladdin.
Hmm.
He's a bit new to the YouTube game. He's more known for his TikTok videos, but he's starting to do YouTube videos as well. He's great. He has a great sense of humor, and I
And
think
actually, Secular Spirits interviewed Apostate Prophet. That
I
was a
have.
very, very good interview. So, guys, do
Yeah,
check that out.
he's just a nice guy, and I just like the relatable way he comes across with his views on Islam. Another one I like is Abdullah Samir's channel. I really like that one too.
Mhm.
One I would recommend people check out the Apostate Prophet as well. I think he's one of the bigger ones. I'm not a big fan of how adversarial he is with his titles and with his approach sometimes, but I think just like as a tool or resource amongst other resources, it's a very valuable one.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's really interesting how like each ex-Muslim YouTuber kind of brings their own style and their own like niche to the game, because then we've got like a good mix of so many different styles, like you're saying, some people it's all about their content. Some people actually like to rile up the Muslims some more. Some people are a lot more confrontational. Some people are a lot more
Yeah.
educational. But I think we have a good mix going, and obviously it's exciting to be a part of it, to have you on board. I think I actually might try and have a chat with Apostate Aladdin as well, because I know he
Please
grew up in
do.
Saudi. Yeah, I think we'll have a lot of or like how our story had so many similar parallels. I think with Apostate Aladdin, when he was talking about, driving to Mecca and doing Umrah and stuff, because living in Saudi, that's really easy to do. We'd do it like, just on the weekend, or my mom would do it while we're
Yeah.
at school. I think we'd have a lot of interesting things to say there. I'm just checking if there's any more questions for you.
I should also check out Harris's channel. I must admit, I've only seen his video with you, so that's
Yeah.
that's on my to-do list.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. His English channel, you'll love it. Like it
I'll
goes to
definitely
human
check it
rights
out.
issues, there's all of Islam being debunked. It's got a really good mix of everything. And he's been around for a while now, so like, it's definitely up there. I don't know who these questions are for, to be honest. Do you think there's hope for ex-Muslims in countries like Pakistan, or is running away the only option? I
I
guess.
I yeah, I think you should take this one because I don't really know much about life in Pakistan, to be honest.
Well, I just think that given the current state of affairs, unless Pakistan has a massive overhaul and like revolution, until they start treating minorities better, until the constitution is more secularized, we get out these hudud punishments. Apostasy and blasphemy isn't just like dished out like it's a hot cake. There is no hope for Pakistan. With a leader like Imran Khan right now, I had so much respect for the guy. I just think he's very confused from an ideological perspective. And with talks of like Riyasat Medina and trying to go back to the times of the Prophet, if you if you read what that was like, it's just not compatible in the 21st century. We're not, as a country, developing in terms of like infrastructure and education and universities. We've got way too many madrasas compared to universities. Science, technology, all of this is lacking. And I just don't think you'll have as good of a standard of life, to be honest, or education or possibilities in life if you stay in a country that's doomed to be backwards until there's some serious change from within. So obviously, like the intelligentsia needs to rise, the academics need to rise, the whole judicial system needs to change, but the actual lawmakers need to start making a difference. We have got a woman who's about to serve as, I think, the Chief Justice or something, which is great. But again, tiny, tiny steps compared to what's happening in Western countries around the world. So Pakistan is very much behind. But yeah, I think maybe not in my lifetime, but maybe soon that it will
That's sad to
change.
hear.
It's
That's really
so
sad.
sad. It really is.
So many people from our part of the world, that's what we say, like not in our lifetime, but hopefully one day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally. It's like that thing, right, where you plant the seed of a tree and you'll never see the tree grow because it's just probably not in our lifetime, which is
Yeah.
really, yeah, it's sad. I'm just checking if I've got any more comments because I know I have to let you go in a minute. What can I say? Right, can I just fire this last question at you and then
Do
we
it.
head off? Because I don't know who it's aimed at, but I'll just let you answer it. It says, What can you say if a Muslim woman will say in front of everybody that her hijab is her choice? What's your opinion?
That's a good one. That's a
Mm-hmm.
really good one. I've thought about that a lot because, like for example, I don't like the approach in France of just banning things in public like that.
Yeah.
But the thing that's so tough about it is because is it really your free choice when you're born into this culture and where
Mm-hmm.
there's all these expectations put on you and what you're supposed to be as a woman from a very young age, and where you know it's these trusted figures in your life, like I was talking about with me, where it's my parents, my teachers telling me that this is the thing that a good woman does, but it's your choice. It's I kind of compare it to your parents telling you you don't have to visit your grandfather, but but he would really like it, and it's the thing that a good grandson would do.
Yeah.
Sure, you're going to see your grandfather after that, but is it of your own, truly of your own free volition? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I think for me, the answer of that kind of thing is it should be, even with what I just said, it should be up to the woman to decide that this is how I want to be. But we should be educating Muslims and non-Muslims alike more about where this whole thing comes from in terms of from Islam and from culture and from wherever. And I think with more education, people will be better armed to make decisions like that. And I think
Yeah.
with more perspectives beyond just Islam's, give people more information, and then you have to let them make their own decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I fully agree. And the crazy thing is we're living in the age of information. So, like it's easy to say one thing, but if you want to find out stuff and you want to see other viewpoints, they're right there. This is the age of information, and the more that women kind of like, because like even the way you just gave me this grandfather example, I know straight away that there's a hint of like emotional blackmail in there. Like I will, because you've put that in my head now. How can I not go see my granddad? Um, but I will think that I'm doing it on my own volition, even though I'm not. So yeah, I hope that's answered the question anyway.
I hope so.
And I think you answered it very well, very succinctly. Yeah, I don't think you have time to answer any more either, but I think we've got the major questions out of the
Okay,
way. And let's definitely do this again. I'm sure,
definitely.
yeah, I'm sure people will be wanting to know a lot more about like your Islamic side of things, exactly like what it was kind of when you delved into Islam and what really kind of pushed the trigger and led you away from it. I know we didn't touch on that too much today, because we just kind of wanted to like bond over
Focus on,
our
yeah.
life stories in the UAE. But yeah, please do follow Secular Spirit on YouTube and on Twitter. And hopefully we'll do this again really soon. And Secular Spirit, thank you so much for being my first live stream guest ever.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
Oh, no, thank you so much for coming. It was a really, really productive conversation. And let's do this again soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Bye.
everyone for watching.
Bye, guys. Take care.